Justine Pissott, just told the Indiana Fever front office exactly where she stands, and it wasn't subtle. In a recent interview, she made it crystal clear that she wants a standard roster spot to play with Caitlin Clark, not a development deal, and if Indiana won't give her one, she's willing to hear what other teams have to say. So while Kelly Krauskopf and Amber Cox are busy stacking guards they don't need, a 6'4" shooter with a 7-foot wingspan is sitting on a ticking clock. And drop a comment below. Do you think the Indiana Fever should put Justine Pissott on the permanent roster? Or do you think she will sign with another team?
Justine Pissott is interviewed, and she does mention that the end goal is that she does want to be on a 12-player roster. What she means by that is a little ambiguous. So Justine Pissott gets interviewed in today's training camp for the Indiana Fever, and she is asked about her spot on the developmental squad and how she feels about that. She does answer, and it does seem a bit ambiguous, and her answer does kind of allude to not wanting to be on the developmental spot.
The Indiana Fever signed Justine Pissott to a development contract, and they were actually the first franchise in WNBA history to use one. So on the surface, that sounds like a cool piece of trivia. But what it actually means for Pissott is a lot more uncomfortable than a footnote in league history. First refusal, meaning they can either match the offer and convert her to a standard deal, or watch her sign somewhere else.
She's a very difficult matchup. You put your guard on her and you try to deny her on the perimeter so she can go down on a low block and post you up. You put your big kid on her so she can't post you up and she's going by you off the dribble. She's a nightmare.
Growing up, the more and more people know that I'm a shooter, I need to do other things instead of just being able to shoot. I would also spend hours and hours working on ball handling. When everyone's out partying or whatever, I'd always have to make sacrifices to work in the gym and get better.
It's her love for the game. She is really just a great worker. Her offensive game is outstanding. She's the best shooter that I've ever.
12-person roster. That's what the mechanism was built for. Pissott shot 42.2% from 3 in her final season at Vanderbilt as a 6'4" forward. She's not a project. She's not someone who needs 2 years of practice reps before she's ready to contribute. So using a development slot on her isn't about her development at all. It's about Krauskopf and Cox wanting the flexibility to keep evaluating without having to commit a standard roster spot. Pissott's caliber tells you exactly how the front office is approaching this. They drafted her, they know what she can do, and they still decided to protect their roster flexibility over protecting their own pick. Teams like Seattle, Dallas, and Washington are already being mentioned as potential landing spots if the window opens, and none of those front offices are going to hesitate if a 6'4" shooter becomes available on a standard deal.
A 6'4" shooter is tough. It is really tough, especially a 6'4" shooter who doesn't see contests. Like, legitimately does not see contests. Like, it's scary how quick the trigger is from Justine Pissott. Like, that trigger's kind of crazy. And then, obviously this one here, she doesn't even see the contest. That could have been an and one. Like, that could have been an and one right there. Like, that was there were some impressive shots.
Justine Pissott is not the kind of player who falls through the cracks on draft day. She averaged 11.1 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists in her final season at Vanderbilt, and she did it while shooting 42.2% from three-point range on 6.6 attempts per game, which ranked 7th in all of women's college basketball that year. That's not a player who needs 2 years to figure out if she belongs. That's a player who already figured it out.
So the Indiana Fever have a they're almost certainly going to have a very tough decision on their hands. And it is about Justine Pissott. It's a really tough decision they're going to have to make.
What makes her profile so unusual is the size. Most 6'4" forwards in college basketball are living in the post, banging bodies, protecting the rim. Pissott spent her time at Vanderbilt pulling defenders out to the arc and knocking shots down over them. And her shooting mechanics are clean enough that scouts were calling her jump shot one of the purest in the entire draft. For a player her size, that's genuinely rare, and one specific problem the Fever have carried for years. They don't have a stretch big. A stretch big is a forward or center whose shooting range forces defenders to guard them out on the perimeter instead of sitting in the paint. And when a team doesn't have one, the paint gets clogged. Aaliyah Boston is one of the best post scorers in the league, But when defenses don't have to respect a shooter at the 4 position, they can park a help defender right in her lap and take that away. Pissott fixes that problem directly. When she's on the floor and defenders have to respect her three-point shot, they can't sag into the lane, which opens driving lanes for Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell, clears space for Boston to operate, and creates kick-out opportunities all over the floor. Stephanie White has been pretty clear about what she wants this offense to look like. Floor spacing and pace, pushing to beat up perimeter looks. Pissott shoots off the catch, shoots off the dribble, and punishes any defense that decides to ignore her, which is exactly the profile that system needs at the 4 position. Pissott herself has talked about how professional teams view her, noting that teams see her more as a three-point shooter, and that her ability to operate inside the paint is something she's still adding to her game. So she knows her role, she understands her value, and her shooting mentality is built on confidence. I think when I'm not worried about making shots is when I make my shots. That's a player who knows exactly what she brings. The Fever knew it too when they drafted her, and then they put her on a development deal anyway, and then she played against the New York Liberty.
Her range is unlimited at 6'4". You know, she's just a tremendous shooter. She's improved the rest of her game, her offense and defense. Her passion for being excellent is what impresses me the most.
I can't tell you the last time I've been out. I feel like all my friends tell me to go out with them, and I'm never out. I'm always in the gym, getting shots up, watching film. I love it.
10 minutes. That's all Pissott played against the New York Liberty in the preseason opener, and she scored 8 points on 2 of 4 shooting, hit 2 of her 3 three-point attempts, and did it against one of the best front courts in the league. Not a practice squad, not a scrimmage. The actual New York Liberty, a team with the length and physicality that eats young players alive when they're not ready. The Liberty front court attacks mismatches and plays through contact, and their length makes it genuinely hard to get clean looks without picking up foul trouble. Pissott went out there on a development deal in the first preseason game of her professional career and knocked down shots anyway. 8 points in 10 minutes against that group is not nothing.
Justine Pissott is huge. Like, if you've been looking at any of the drills, Justine Pissott is huge.
But here's what the Liberty game actually showed. Her physical tools aren't a projection anymore. A 7-foot wingspan at 6 feet 4 inches means she can get a hand on shots that most forwards can't even reach, and her ability to switch onto guards without getting completely destroyed is real in a way that doesn't always show up for players her size. Length covers mistakes while a player is still learning the defensive system, and Pissott has enough of it that the mistakes don't turn into easy buckets. On offense, that same size and reach means she can shoot over smaller defenders without needing extra space to create separation, which is a big reason why her shot mechanics translated so directly from Vanderbilt to a WNBA preseason game. She doesn't need a perfect catch and a step back to get her shot off. She catches, rises, and the ball goes over whoever's in front of her.
Versatility to the game.
16 points on the night. And book it. Or the Fever knocks it down.
Some scouts have already drawn comparisons between her physical dimensions and Breanna Stewart's. And that comparison isn't about the level of play, it's about the body type. Long, versatile, able to guard multiple positions and shoot from anywhere on the floor. That's the ceiling this development contract is sitting on. Aaliyah Boston noticed. After the Liberty game, Boston talked about how having a post player who can shoot changes everything for everyone else on the floor, because when defenses can't ignore the shooter at the 4, the whole offense opens up. That's not a scouting report, that's a teammate telling you exactly what Pissott does to a defense in real time.
She's on her man. Goes down low. Covering the box. Okay, not making it easy there. And this is from today, so decent footwork, lateral movement. Had her arms up, didn't make that pass easy.
Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham have been in the gym with her too, And that kind of chemistry doesn't get built on a development timeline where a player's future with the team is genuinely uncertain. It gets built when a player is actually there, actually competing, actually earning trust from the people who've been in this program. Look at the Fever's projected roster and count the guards. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, Tiasha Harris, Raven Johnson, and Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. That's 7 perimeter players on a 12-person roster, and Walker-Kimbrough is sitting there competing for the last spot against Pissott, a 6'4" forward who shoots 42.2% from 3. 7 guards, 1 stretch big, and the front office is apparently fine with those numbers.
I don't think people understand. 6'4" snipers don't grow on trees.
Walker-Kimbrough dropped 18 points in 22 minutes in the preseason opener, so she can play. Nobody's disputing that. But the Fever don't need more scoring off the bench at the guard position. They need someone who forces defenses to make a choice they don't want to make. And Walker-Kimbrough doesn't do that from the 4 spot because she's not playing the 4 spot. She's another guard in a rotation that's already stacked with guards, competing for minutes that Clark and Mitchell and Hull are already eating up. Indiana's front court problem isn't about bodies. Aaliyah Boston anchors that paint, and she's one of the best post scorers in the league at doing it. The problem is that without a shooter at the 4 position, defenses don't have to respect the perimeter on that side of the floor, so they just park a help defender in the lane and take Boston's post game away. Stephanie White spelled it out herself. The offense runs on spacing, on forcing defenses to collapse on rim attacks and then spraying the ball out to open shooters. That whole system breaks down if defenses don't have to guard the 4 spot out on the arc.
My beautiful rookie, how's your first media day going?
It's great. I love it, and I'm just glad to be here.
Pissott is the one player on this roster who fixes that. She spaces the floor from the wing and the elbow, and when defenders have to chase her out to the 3-point line, that's 1 fewer body crowding the paint for Boston and 1 fewer defender able to help on Clark's drives. Clark's entire game as a playmaker depends on having shooters around her who actually draw defensive attention. And when the 4 position doesn't demand respect, defenses just load up on her driving lanes and make every pick and roll harder than it needs to be. Losing Pissott doesn't just cost Indiana a roster spot, it costs Clark space. Some people around the team have already pointed out that the Fever have already promised everybody their roles, which suggests Walker-Kimbrough's spot might be more secure than the front office is letting on publicly. If that's accurate, it means Krauskopf and Cox have already decided to keep the redundant guard and let the development contract situation play out on its own timeline, right of first refusal and all. White wants to space the floor the way that we want, and the Fever are apparently going to try doing that without the one player who actually spaces it from the 4. Pissott sat down for an interview recently and didn't throw a tantrum, didn't call out the front office by name, didn't do anything dramatic. She just answered the question honestly, and what she said was this: "My goal is still to make a 12-player roster, not the Indiana Fever's 12-player roster. A 12-player roster. That one word, A, is doing a lot of work, and anyone in league circles who heard it understood exactly what she meant."
Does it help having that developmental contract in place? Does that kind of, alleviate a little bit of the pressure on you as you try and find your way with things?
Honestly, not as much as you probably think. My goal is still to make a 12-player roster. But again, I'm super thankful that I'm even considered to be on that contract. But again, the main goal is to be able to come to the 12 spot.
She's not coming into the WNBA to practice 5 days a week and appear in a handful of games while her development contract ticks down. She wants real minutes, a real contract, and a real shot at competing alongside Clark and Boston and this core group that she's already been grinding with every day in the gym. The development deal doesn't take the pressure off, she said so herself, because the pressure was never about making the Fever's roster specifically. It's about making a roster, period. And if Indiana won't give her a standard spot, she and her camp will take calls from teams that will. Once that 14-day exclusivity window closes, Seattle or Dallas or any other team with a roster need at the 4 position can ring her agent and put a standard contract on the table. and that conversation becomes very real, very fast. Indiana still gets to match any offer, right of first refusal and all that, but think about what that actually looks like from Pissott's side. Another franchise steps up first, shows actual commitment, and then the Fever scramble to match it after weeks of silence. That's not how you build trust with a player you're asking to buy into your championship vision for 2026.
But how do you feel like you got out of playing against other opponents that are not in this building here with it?
That's a good question. I mean, I think just being able to play around people that love this sport is an advantage, I guess. I mean, everybody in this league is super talented, and I'm just thankful to be a part of that.
Boston already told anyone who'd listen that there's nothing better than having a post player that shoots the ball as well as she does. That's not a scout's evaluation. That's your starting center telling you she wants this player on the floor with her, because she understands better than anyone what a shooting four does for her post game. Pissott has been into the stretch big that makes some other franchise harder to beat in the exact playoff matchups Indiana needs to win to get Clark her MVP season, and this team its first championship. Krauskopf and Cox have a right of first refusal sitting in their back pocket, but that protection only works if they actually use it before the clock runs out on their own pick. So here's where Indiana actually stands. A 6'4" shooter with a 7-foot wingspan, 42.2% from 3 at Vanderbilt, held her own against the Liberty in preseason, already building real chemistry with Clark and Boston. And she's sitting on a development deal while the clock runs out. Krauskopf and Cox aren't just risking losing Pissott, they're potentially gifting her to a rival like Seattle, Washington, or even the Liberty, teams that would sign her without blinking. Teams Indiana might face in 2026 when Clark is chasing an MVP and this roster needs every advantage it can get. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Indiana Fever should put Justine Pissott on the permanent roster? Or do you think she will sign with another team? Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.